Hello and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Hello and welcome to Enlightened Empaths. We're so excited to share with you some more stories of dream visitations that you all have been sending in to us. I love seeing these stories. I know you do too, Denise, and I think our listeners are enjoying them as well.
Yes, and from what you and I have been talking about and from hearing from folks is there's a lot of dream activity right now. So
Yeah.
I tend to believe that people come to visit around the holidays, around birthdays, around events. So maybe as we talk about these dream stories, it will be a little catalyst to invite your people in as well.
Yeah, I think it's just like here on Earth when we're getting ready to see people or send cards and touch base and say hello. I think our loved ones on the other side do the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start us off with our first one. This is sent in from Susan. My elderly Aunt Rose passed away in the early 1990s. This was prior to email, and besides, my pragmatic Aunt Rose believed in handwritten correspondence. Reluctantly, as I sat upright in my armchair, I dozed off for just a few minutes. During that interlude, I felt myself lifted from my chair into what I can only describe as an ethereal space. I heard a grandfather clock chime, and my Aunt Rose spoke briskly in her New England dialect. I've been trying to contact you. Check your email. I jolted awake and chuckled. Nevertheless, I checked my email. Nothing. Then I opened my junk mail, and a message from Ancestry.com was in my inbox for quite some time. It was a photo of my Aunt Rose's headstone. Wow.
Oh,
That
that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one on so many levels because first of all, she loved to write letters and send letters to people. And she it seems as though she has this very direct personality, and she's been trying to get this message to her. It's been waiting in her junk inbox for a while. And boy, did she use the dream state to get that message across.
And I love that that little clip New England dialect came through. Go check your email.
Yes.
Our next one says, I'd like to share a dream visitation I had 1 month prior to my mother's passing nearly 20 years ago. My mother unexpectedly suffered a heart attack in her late 30s. She spent several weeks in ICU, but thankfully was able to recover. As to be expected, this was an extremely difficult time for our family. My family and I visited the hospital daily and were grateful when she was moved out of ICU. One particular afternoon, my grandparents were out running errands, and I had a few hours before our trip to the hospital. Still emotionally drained and physically exhausted, I decided to take a nap on our couch. I awoke to see my great aunt sitting on the floor across the room. My arm was blocking my view from seeing her face, but I was able to recognize her hairstyle. I noticed she was holding an old, even at that time, cordless phone. In an effort to see her face, I turned my attention to my arm and attempted to move it. I tried with all my might, but it wouldn't budge. Finally giving in, I decided to look back at my aunt. Only this time she was gone and my mother was in her place. Again, I wasn't able to see her face, but I recognized her hair, and she was on the same cordless phone. About that time, my grandparents walked in the door and I jolted awake. I jumped up and immediately ran to tell them about the dream. My great aunt was my grandmother's sister who had passed away 12 years prior. My grandmother and I racked our brains but couldn't make sense of the dream. We were extremely close growing up. However, we couldn't recall speaking about her in the last several years. We pushed the dream aside and headed to the hospital. We entered the hospital room. My grandmother went to one side of the bed and I went to the other. Before anyone could say anything, my mother turned directly to me and asked if I spoke to Pat, my great aunt. My grandmother and I stared in silence for what seemed like forever. Finally, she turned towards my mother and asked what we were supposed to talk about. My mother shook her head in confusion as if she didn't understand why she asked me that. She then proceeded to change the subject. My mother was able to leave the hospital with what we understood would be a long road ahead with many surgeries. Tragically, she passed away 1 month later. Looking back, my family and I truly believe she chose to stay one additional month to say her final goodbyes. I'm grateful for the dream visitation. and the comfort it provided following her passing. Thank you for all you do. Well, that's an incredibly lovely story. I'm sorry about the passing. That part's not lovely, but just how clear and vivid that the great aunt came through, and knowing that, the mom was in ICU, there were all these other things going on. It just amazes me how they know how and when to show up, because they're still a part of things.
They really are. And the mother had an awareness that she was there in that quote unquote dream with our listener and her great aunt Pat. And that's absolutely miraculous to me.
Right.
I wonder sometimes, what's come up in readings a lot is that one person in the family will choose to be kind of like the guardian angel of that family, and they will always stay close to that family and keep an eye on everything. And I wonder if that's what this great aunt, if that's her role on the other side. And that's one of the reasons she was the main one to show up.
Yeah, and then you have to wonder, was that a role she played in the family when she was here? Because I think sometimes they keep doing it.
Right,
They
right.
they keep watching out. My father had an older sister. He was the youngest of nine children. He had a older sister who was like a second mom to him. So when people have connected with her in spirit, they get that energy from her, that she's still looking out for folks. So kind of fun to think about.
It is. And as we say, you don't really change your personality a whole lot when you get over there. You are who you are.
Right.
Okay, our next one says, I have so many great visitation dreams that I cannot count, shared by multiple deceased family members, but please allow me to share a few. Just for context, my husband and I bought my grandparents' house where I grew up going over my entire childhood and even lived in the home for a short while with them. My great grandma Nana passed away in the house on my birthday in 2019. Fast forward to 2020, we sold our home in town and moved into my grandma's house before purchasing it to help care for my grandpa, who had a cancerous brain tumor. We moved into the room where Nana had passed and later renovated the other rooms, moving into the bedroom that my grandpa had died in back in December of 2020. The night my grandpa died, I went to bed and dreamt of him in his chair in the living room, looking completely normal, healthy, plump, color in his cheeks, smiling. I remember thinking in the dream, how did he get so much better so quickly? The next day, my brother started to tell me about his dream and how Papa came back to life and was in his chair. Since both their deaths, I would see them frequently. My Nana never says much, but my Papa was able to hug me in them pretty soon after he passed. He was such a strong man. A few days ago, I was sitting in my living room, almost where my grandpa used to sit, and I thought, I haven't seen you guys in a while. I miss you. That night, I dreamt my papa was in my room and he looked fine. I walked up to him in my dream and gave him the biggest hug. Oh,
Oh,
that is beautiful.
it is.
And I
It
have
is.
to say, it doesn't always work that way. I mean, I know I've done that. I've said to my people, hey, I miss you. Come to me in a dream tonight. And they're usually like, yeah, we'll get back to you, Samantha. And it usually takes a couple of weeks. Maybe that's just my family, but just if anyone else is like that too, I don't want anyone to hear this and go, "Oh, that's all you have to do is ask them, and they show up that night." I don't think it always works that way. So I'm very, very happy to hear that for this listener, it does. It might be because, as she said, her grandfather was such a strong man, and I don't even mean physically. I mean, just if you're emotionally, mentally, spiritually strong, and you just have that force of love connecting you to, and living in the same house. I wonder if that makes it easier for them to show up that way.
So the other question or thought that popped into my head was that she had the dream, and the next day her brother starts to tell about his dream. So they had the dream,
Yes.
on the same night. So would, you know how they say that people in spirit can bilocate and be, I could connect with someone and someone else could connect with that same person, different energy frequency, all the things we've talked about. That would be interesting when people, how many times there's like a time frame with coming in for family roughly around the same time.
Yeah, I think that is really intriguing. And this is a really amazing experience of a shared dream. And I almost feel like her and her brother, their soul together. left their body, left that house, and went to a liminal space to visit with their grandfather.
And I love that she got the hug.
I know.
That's nice.
That's hard for them to be able to physically hold us in a dream. They have to really learn that.
Right. That's incredible. Very uplifting though, isn't it? It's a nice
Yeah,
story.
and very uplifting and just life confirming and affirming, that our soul really does go on and we can come back and say hello and check in and give a hug. Oh, what's better than that?
True.
Okay, let's take a quick break to mention our sponsor.
So today's episode is sponsored by mylifeinabook.com. This is probably the most thoughtful gift I've ever come across for parents, for grandparents, for relatives, for the winter holidays as families get together to celebrate. Basically, a very, very powerful way to connect emotionally with them, preserve the most precious memories, and show them that you really care. And best of all, it's an instantaneous gift. And they were very kind and sent me a copy of this book. It is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. The quality of the paper, the binding, the hardcover, the photos, incredible, incredible book. Every week in mylifeinabook.com lets you choose from a list of thought-provoking questions or even write your own, which gets sent to your relative by email.
Yeah,
You
and then
want
they answer them and they can upload photos and they're really cool questions like, what's your favorite memory from your childhood? Or they'll ask things like, who was your best friend growing up? Like things you might not know about your mom or dad or your grandparents or, whomever you're thinking of gifting this to. And they compile it all year long. And then it arrives in this beautiful book that is just a treasure that you can hold on to forever. They even offer it in audio format as well. You can get as many copies as you want. So with mylifeinabook.com, you can give those you love a very personal gift that generations from now will always treasure and look to. And it tells them that they're meaningful to you and all future generations. If you want to save $10 off your first purchase, use discount code ENLIGHTENED. So just go to mylifeinabook.com and use the code ENLIGHTENED. Once again, to get $10 off, use the code ENLIGHTENED at mylifeinabook.com. Perfect holiday gift.
excellent. Hey, our next one, I had a very difficult relationship with my husband, and we'd been divorced for 15 years before he died. We had no communication, and it was a contentious divorce. Before he died in September 2019, I went for my first energy clearing, and it was incredible. During the clearing, I saw a vision of my ex-husband encased in a bright white bubble, floating away from me with a loving smile on his face, something I would never think I would see from him. A few weeks later, I was hiking along my favorite trail when I stopped suddenly in my tracks by an energy field that made me freeze and caused sobbing deep within my soul. It lasted about 30 seconds, and when it was over, I felt the energy release me and slide off of my arms, and I reached into the sky and grabbed, saying, "Please, no, don't go." I couldn't explain why that happened at that time. 3 days later, I got a call from my daughter that my ex-husband was found dead in his home in Michigan. He died 3 days before. 2 weeks later, I went to visit my middle son in Indianapolis. I planned a visit from months before, and my son was very protective of his father, worried that I might say something negative now that his father had no option to defend himself. I was never like that before during the divorce, but regardless, that was my son's fear, and he let me know it, lashing out angrily at me. That night, as I lay in bed in my son's home, I fell asleep very sad and devastated for the loss of my children's father and for their complete devastation as well. I had my visitation then. He came to me leaning up against the Coast Guard boat railing as he was in the Coast Guard for his career. He was dressed in his favorite collared shirt and jeans, smiling at me, appearing about 20 years younger. We smiled lovingly at each other, and with no lips moving, we said, "I'm so sorry for everything. I forgive you." I woke up right then and knew it was him and not a dream. I anxiously went back to sleep to try and see him again, but he didn't come back. He was with me. He has been with me since, helping me with signs and answers for my children. It solidified a deep knowledge that our earth personality and existence, the one we create in this physical world, are definitely part of the greater life plan to learn lessons. I understand now that he is not truly that way in spirit, and that we'll always be connected and love each other eternally. That is incredible, and it goes along that premise of if we haven't had the opportunity to make amends or to say we're sorry or to heal or to release, we can still work on that when someone passes. And I think this visitation is a beautiful, beautiful example of that, that there was still love in their hearts. And it just I really like this one a lot.
I do too. And it makes you really realize that there is a soul plan that we create. And it must have been in their soul plan to come together this way and have these children and then unfortunately divorce. I think that's what she's talking about when she refers to the greater life plan, but that there's still love there. And even
Mhm.
though there might be, animosity, and I mean, no divorce is fun, right? Even who's Tom Brady, they got divorced in what, like under 24 hours?
It was pretty quick.
It was very, very quick. Even if you can have a quick divorce with all the money to ease all the stress of it, it's still never an easy process. And so, yeah, there might have been some difficult words expressed, but the love is still there. And I love that he visited her as he was leaving the earth. That's what she was feeling when she was on that hike, right?
Exactly.
And so we always, our soul will travel different places as we are leaving the earth. I knew that when my mother-in-law was passing, and I saw that spiral of white light next to me when I was praying for her as she was going, and I wasn't at the hospital with her. I was with the kids. And so I do think that when our soul leaves, we go to the people that we love to say goodbye. And then he came back in a dream.
Mhm.
You know what fascinates me about some of these, or really all of these dream visitation stories, Denise? They're so similar to what we read in near death experience stories.
Oh, that's a really good point.
They
Huh.
look younger and they appear with people that they loved or were close to, or in this case, against a boat that he loved and was connected to his career most of his life. And they're going through a life review and they're asking for forgiveness. I don't know. It's very similar.
That's usually an indicator of it being a visitation and not something stored in your subconscious, right? Is if
Oh,
someone's healthy and happy and bringing through a message that helps healing on this side. I would think that if it's coming across replaying maybe a tragedy or anger or upset, that could be your subconscious manifesting that, and it's not a true visitation.
yeah, I agree completely. I love that they said, I'm so sorry for everything and I forgive you at the same time.
Yeah, well, that
Oh, so beautiful. Okay. Our next one says, I was hoping to get your opinion on a dream visit. In the dream, I was watching myself meet another person. Okay, I have to pause there. That is a sign of a lucid dream experience where you are both the participant and the observer. So whenever that happens to you in a dream, just know, ooh, something special is going on. Okay, I digress. Our listener says, it was like I was watching a movie of myself and this other person meeting. I'm in the dream as me and also as myself meeting the other person. This other person was a man who looked like the pictures we see of Jesus: long brown hair, beard, and a plain peasant type long robe. But in the dream, I thought, why is Russell Brand hugging me? She writes, if you don't know who he is, he's a British actor who was married to Katy Perry. And I want to note that in no way do I find him attractive. Oh, Russell, we apologize. He's very funny. Okay. So this man walked up to me and embraced me. While I was hugging him, the feelings that came over me were indescribable. You know how people who have had an NDE describe the love they feel from people on the other side? It was like that. Pure, unconditional love and warmth, and feeling that everything was okay and would always be okay. And this person would always be there for me. It's a feeling like I've never experienced on the earth plane. It's the love we all long for. We embraced, and then the dream was over. I woke up crying and in shock. My inner voice told me to try to hold on to that feeling for as long as I could because it will fade away. And sure enough, over a couple of months, I could no longer close my eyes and replicate that exact feeling. I'd love to know your thoughts on who this was. Could it have been Jesus, a spirit guide, an angel, my higher self? I had no idea why this experience happened when it did. Nothing unusual was happening in my life. I've asked numerous times for that person to come visit me in my dreams again, but it hasn't happened. Wow. Okay, this is so weird, Denise, because I was just visiting my dear friend over the weekend and we were talking so early on in my intuitive development. Those of you who've listened to me for a long time know that I am incredibly shy, and showing up to things alone is really not my favorite thing to do. So when I would go to all these like intuitive development or crystal or meditation workshops, I would often drag my dear friend along with me. And she was great and game and would come along, but she wasn't like looking to be intuitive or psychic or figure out what her clairs or chakras were. She was just being a very good friend. So this one time we go to this meditation class, and this is a long time ago. This is like 2008 or 9. And in the meditation, she had a vision of Jesus. And it's so identical to what this listener is writing. He hugged her and she had that same feeling, everything. And after that, she didn't know what to make of it. She had the same thoughts as this listener, like, no way would Jesus take time to visit me. But everything in her life changed. Everything. I mean, it totally awakened a whole new spiritual awakening in her. I just used awakening twice, but y'all know what I mean. Her whole life changed for the better. So we were talking over this weekend and she was like, "Do you remember that class we took?" And da da da. And she said, "I think about that experience almost every day. And I still feel like no way would Jesus make time to visit little old me." And it just makes me sad because I think, well, why not? You know, if we're all sons and daughters of our creator, and and you maybe, well, she is, my friend is Christian. I don't know if this listener is Christian, and so that's the higher power you resonate with. But maybe you're Buddhist and you have an experience where Buddha comes to visit you. I don't want to make this the Jesus show. I'm just saying, if any ascended higher power comes to you, I think for us to say, "Oh, I must have made that up," or "No way would he or she take the time for me." I don't want people to do that because we're all the same in the eyes of God. I'm
Beautifully
rambling, but do
said.
you know what I'm trying
No,
to say?
yes, I do. And I agree. If we're all that spark of light and connecting to source, because we know a lot of folks that do this work. We've interacted with a lot of people over the years. It seems that some people channel higher deities or bring through that energy. Their focus is there rather than with connecting in a mediumship kind of way. A lot of healers, a lot of therapists, a lot of people that work in tandem with spirit tend to align with Mother Mary or Jesus or Kuan Yin or Buddha or any of them. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I do too. And I wonder if this listener was going through a difficult experience. I shared a story in the book, The Awakened Dreamer, that one of our listeners sent in. And she writes how she was very, very depressed and she couldn't she could not get over that depression. It wasn't like, "Oh, I had a bad day and I'm sad." It was depression. And she was praying about it and praying about it. And she had a dream that Mother Mary came to her. And I'm not remembering the details perfectly right now, but it was almost the way I envisioned it when I read her story. It was almost like Mother Mary put her through like an MRI machine. She lay down and went through like this tunnel of light, and she said it absorbed all her sadness. And she said that the heavy weight of depression, she said, at the time that I'm writing this, has never returned.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So maybe, these higher beings come to us when we're going through a difficult time, or like in the case of my friend, needed a little push to really change some significant things in her life and embark on her spiritual journey. I don't know, but I know, like, if I don't want to say if I were Jesus, but like if I visited someone in the dream state and they were like, "Oh no, it couldn't have been," I'd be like, "No, it was me." I feel bad for the listener and I feel bad for Jesus.
Mhm. That's spoken like a true empath.
All right, let's move on before I ramble. Do we have time for
Okay.
one more?
Sure. Last year, my neighbor, who was in her early 70s, was ill and in the hospital. We had had a neighborly relationship and mostly talked out front while she watered her plants, or on Sunday afternoons, or over a glass of champagne. She was also very sweet and chatty with my then 6-year-old daughter. When she entered the hospital, her children were gracious enough to let some of us who knew her come and say goodbye. She was no longer awake or verbal, but I sat with her for 30 minutes or so and chatted with her daughter-in-law. And when I went to say goodbye, I leaned down to kiss her cheek. And for whatever reason, I whispered, "Come visit me." I don't know exactly what possessed me to do so, but there it was. She died 2 days later, and on the third day after her passing was when my interaction occurred. I woke up that morning and was in that in-between stage of awake and asleep. All of a sudden, she was there in my mind's eye. It was not the image of a woman, young or old, or of a person at all. It was a whitish oblong shape of light, but I knew it was her. We spoke telepathically, and I asked her if Roger, her husband, was with her. He died of Alzheimer's a few years earlier. Her energetic image whisked out of my mind's eye so fast and returned just as swiftly with another white oblong light standing beside her. I felt so much joy for her. I asked her if her sister was there. She died a year prior. Again, her light whisked out of my mind's eye and whisked right back in with a third white oblong shape. No words were spoken, no faces were seen, but all this information I knew, and it was real, and it made me so happy to know they were all together. That encounter left me with so many gifts. I've been on this journey, an awakening and spiritual development and so forth, for 4 years or so now. I never believed I'd be a medium or capable of telepathy. I told myself those gifts were reserved for the special intuitives. We truly all are spiritual beings having a human experience. We can all tap into these gifts of life that we are told are reserved for the few. I'm so grateful that so many people, myself included, are awakening to these hidden truths about humanity. And hopefully this story can remind or reinforce that whatever you want for your life can make its way into your life. You just need to ask. You need to be open and believe all things are possible for you. Oh, that is incredible. I
That
love the
really
white
is.
oblong shapes.
Yeah, I do too. And I love that she knew. And for our students, Denise, who've taken our classes, when she had that knowing, that is called claircognizance.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that too. And I love that she just trusted it, and went with it. And again, here we have another listener saying, I thought this was a reserve for special people.
Right. And
There,
that's not the
there,
case.
there are no special people.
I just think some people work a little harder to turn up the volume or fine tune the frequency. But in my heart, I really believe we all have that capacity to make a connection with spirit.
I do too. I mean, I believe that with everything in me. I just don't believe it's easy. I think some
No.
people think if it's meant to be, that it'll just turn on. They'll just be suddenly psychic, like the title of that book. And maybe that does happen, but it's incredibly rare. And in my experience, these type of encounters only happen when I am working my spiritual path. And I mean working it, like making time to meditate, making time to eat well and exercise and drink plenty of water, and making time to journal and carve out some time for myself. Like it work on my chakras and balancing my energy. It takes a lot of work,
Mhm. That's
but
true.
but we all have it. We all have that capacity.
And I do think it comes more naturally for some people, or if there is a genetic connection that can make it an easier way to connect, or if you grew up where it was more normalized. So I'm not saying, I agree with you very, very much that it's not like, okay, I'm going to be a medium now. Boom, I'm a medium. But I also don't ever use that word, oh, I have a gift that nobody else has, because I just don't believe that.
No, I don't either. And yeah, of course it's going to come more easily to some people. It's like how math comes easily to some people and other people, English is their easiest class. We're always going to have that. And then there's other things that come in the way. I mean, if you have religious overtones that are inhibiting you, or if you're just a very insecure, doubtful person, you're going to have to overcome that. So there are a lot of hurdles. That's why I love researching dreams, because I found in the dream state, we are just our soul. We aren't our personality, right? So a lot of those dreams, a lot of those doubts and fears and inhibitions that we carry around with us during the day are completely gone. They melt away at night when we sleep, and we're just left with our soul. And that's why it's easier, I feel, to have these amazing, miraculous experiences while we're sleeping.
It makes perfect sense.
But if you can have them in your sleep, you can have them during the daytime as well.
Good point.
And so if anyone has had a really cool shared dream experience or precognitive dream or a visit from a loved one in heaven, that really does mean you have this intuitive ability, and you can, with some effort and consistency, hone it.
Right. But it is always a wonderful gift to have our people, or our loved ones, or our old dear friends come and visit us in a dream. And we say this every time we do these dream shows. If your people haven't shown up or you're waiting for them to show up, it's not that they don't want to come see you, or they're not, maybe they're just still working on it, or it could be that you're not wired to have that come as easily for you as some other aspects of your intuitive development and connection.
Yeah, or it could be that they're still going through it on the other side. I've had several dream experiences with my dad, and he's still really in this healing modality, and he's still processing his life review. And luckily I've had a few dreams, and my one of my sisters has had a few dreams as well, where a lot of us are helping him with that life review process. Now I
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. I had this really, well, anyway, I won't tell all the dreams, but I have not had a dream visit from my father-in-law, who was, I mean, he was so Catholic, he makes Mother Teresa look a little lax. So I don't know if he's gonna pop into my dream, because that would be like saying, Sam, you were right. I don't know. We'll have to see. So I
did
think
he,
sometimes if their life view of the other side opposes what they see on the other side, often it can be more difficult for them to come through.
that explains it in a way that would make perfect sense. I keep saying it makes perfect sense, but it really does. And I just love that when the healing that comes through, or the sense of peace that comes through, or to me, the difference between a visitation and a dream about someone is when it's so real, you want to go back to sleep so you can spend more time with them.
Yes. Oh, that's a great way to describe it. Oh, well, we have more of these stories, and so we'll share a couple more of these wonderful dream stories on a later show. Please remember, if you want to share a dream visitation story, or drop us a line, or ask a question for an upcoming community connections, you can always email us enlightenedempaths@gmail.com. And before we wrap up, I just want to say that yes, somebody keeps hacking or copying, I don't know what the word is, my Instagram, and soliciting our lovely listeners for readings, pretending to be me. And it is infuriating me, and I hate it. And I've asking everyone to block and report them. But please know, if you get a message from someone claiming to be me, it's not me. I never, ever DM anyone on Instagram. I rarely remember to check my DMs on Instagram. I'm not the best at social media, and I would never just pop into anyone's inbox and offer to give them a reading. So just wanted to
Yeah.
put that out there.
Right. And it's always strange that there's an extra T, or there's an extra M, or I just think all the effort that goes into that, go do something productive.
I know. Go get a real job. Don't steal. And oh, it makes me so mad. And it's I feel like we know our listeners, so it's even in a more personal affront. And
Right.
one of them sent a reading message request to my daughter. We were all snuggled up in my bed watching a Christmas movie, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, mom." And I grabbed that phone from her and I messaged that person back. And that account disappeared in 10 seconds. But then someone or the same person just created a new one the next day. But
Wow.
don't come at my children. That was mm-mm.
No, that's stepping over a big line.
Yeah, I was so mad. Anyway, so just know that is not me. Okay. Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you have a wonderful week. Please remember, as always, to show up, do great work, and share your light.
Take care.